When Mind Your Language first aired in 1977, no one could have predicted the legacy it would leave behind. On the surface, it was just another British sitcom, a classroom full of foreign students learning English under the patient guidance of Mr. Jeremy Brown. But behind the jokes, misunderstandings, and stereotypes lies a story far more complicated. Loved by audiences around the world, condemned by critics at home, and filled with behind-the-scenes drama, the show became one of television's most unlikely cult hits. For some, it's a warm slice of nostalgia. For others, it's a reminder of how much television has changed. It has now been nearly 5 decades since the series first aired, and the secrets behind Mind Your Language are as surprising as the show itself. And since this sitcom reached fans across every continent, let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from today? 1. The show was almost canceled immediately. When Mind Your Language first appeared on ITV in 1977, even its creators weren't sure it would last. The premise: a night school classroom filled with foreign students, each with their own thick accent and cultural quirks, made executives nervous. Some thought it was too risky, too controversial, and feared it would be pulled before the first series finished. But what ITV didn't expect was the reaction from viewers. Despite critics dismissing it as silly and tasteless, the show became an instant hit with the public. Ratings soared, with millions tuning in every week to watch Mr. Brown try and fail to keep order in his chaotic classroom. By the end of its first run, it was one of the network's most popular comedies. What could have been quietly canceled after a single episode instead turned into a cult phenomenon. Against all odds, Mind Your Language survived, and its very survival became the first secret in its long and complicated legacy. 2. International success versus UK backlash. In Britain, Mind Your Language was never a critic's favorite. Reviewers at the time called it outdated, offensive, and lazy, pointing to its heavy use of cultural stereotypes. By the late 70s, some media voices were already suggesting it was inappropriate for modern television. But outside the UK, the reaction couldn't have been more different. In India, Pakistan, Malaysia, Nigeria, and across much of Africa, the sitcom became a runaway hit. International audiences loved the humor, the classroom chaos, and the way it exaggerated everyday misunderstandings. For viewers who had learned English as a second language, the struggles of Mr. Brown's students felt oddly familiar, even if exaggerated for laughs. In fact, overseas success kept the show alive long after it had lost favor at home. When ITV axed it in 1979, foreign broadcasters demanded more episodes. That international demand eventually brought about the 1986 revival, proving that what failed to impress critics in Britain had captured hearts around the globe. It's one of the strangest contrasts in television history. A show mocked in its home country, yet loved across continents. 3. Real classroom inspiration. The idea for Mind Your Language didn't come out of thin air. Writer Vince Powell had been fascinated by the wave of English-language night schools that sprang up across London in the 1970s. Britain was becoming more multicultural, and thousands of new arrivals from Europe, Asia, and Africa were signing up for classes to improve their English. Powell saw the comedy potential in the mix of accents, cultural misunderstandings, and the patience required of teachers. He built the character of Mr. Jeremy Brown as the everyman tutor, thrown into a classroom of wildly different students, each bringing their own quirks and frustrations to the lesson. What was striking is that many of the show's jokes really did have roots in real experiences. Teachers at the time reported that the mix-ups in communication could be as funny as they were frustrating. Of course, the sitcom exaggerated everything for laughs, but Powell insisted the heart of the show was based on reality. Behind the slapstick and stereotypes was a small truth. Classrooms like these existed all over London. Mind Your Language simply turned them into television, and in doing so, found comedy in cultural chaos. 4. Barry Evans's tragic life. At the heart of Mind Your Language was Barry Evans, the young actor who played Mr. Jeremy Brown. With his gentle charm and patient smile, he became the glue that held the classroom chaos together. Evans was already a familiar face to British audiences, having starred in Doctor in the House and the film Here We Go Round the Mulberry Bush. By the late 70s, many believed he was on the path to becoming one of Britain's brightest comedy stars. But Evans's life took a darker turn after the show ended. Work became scarce, and unlike his co-stars, he struggled to find lasting roles. By the 1990s, he had left acting entirely and was working as a cab driver in Leicestershire. In February 1997, tragedy struck. Evans was found dead at his home with a head injury. He was only 53 years old. Conflicting reports left the circumstances unclear. Some suggested natural causes, others suspected foul play, but no definitive conclusion was reached. What is certain is that Barry Evans's early promise was never fully realized. His untimely death added a layer of sadness to a sitcom remembered mostly for laughs. 5. Cast came from around the world. One of the most striking things about Mind Your Language was the cast itself. Unlike many sitcoms of the era, which relied on British actors pretending to be foreigners, this show brought together a genuinely international group of performers. Albert Moses, who played Ranjit Singh from India, was actually from Sri Lanka. Pik Sen Lim, who played Miss Chung, was born in Malaysia and went on to a long career in British television. Françoise Pascal, who played the glamorous French student Danielle, was born in Mauritius and had already made a name for herself in films and on stage. Dino Shafiq, the lovable Ali Nadim, really was from Dhaka, Bangladesh, and remained one of the most recognizable comic actors of his generation. This authenticity gave the series a special edge. While the characters were exaggerated stereotypes, the actors brought real cultural background into the mix. They knew the accents, the mannerisms, and the frustrations of being seen as foreign in Britain. That combination of authenticity and comedy made the classroom feel both absurd and strangely real. For a sitcom built on cultural misunderstandings, casting actors from around the world was not just clever, it was essential. 6. The banned episodes. Although Mind Your Language was a hit with audiences, not every episode has stood the test of time. In fact, some episodes from the original run have never been rebroadcast on British television. ITV quietly shelved certain stories, believing their content was too politically sensitive for later decades. While the 1970s audience largely embraced the humor, by the 1980s and 90s, critics argued that the show relied too heavily on stereotypes. Episodes that poked fun at nationalities or leaned into cultural cliches were singled out as inappropriate for repeat airings. Yet abroad, these same episodes often continued to play without issue. In India, Africa, and parts of Asia, the series was rerun regularly, and no episodes were cut. On DVD releases and online platforms, fans can still find the full series, including the so-called banned installments. The result is a strange divide. British viewers who watched reruns on TV missed certain episodes, while international fans often saw the show in its entirety. For many, discovering that episodes were once considered too controversial is itself one of the great surprises about the show's legacy. 7. The unexpected revival. 1986. After running for 3 series between 1977 and 1979, Mind Your Language was canceled by ITV. Critics had turned against it, and executives felt its humor was out of step with the changing times. Most thought that was the end of the story. But outside Britain, the show had become a phenomenon. Audiences in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East couldn't get enough of Mr. Brown's chaotic classroom. Demand for reruns was so strong that producers saw an opportunity. And so, in 1986, 7 years after its original cancellation, Mind Your Language returned to television. The revival brought back Barry Evans as Jeremy Brown, along with several familiar faces from the original cast, but also introduced new students to freshen up the classroom dynamic. Although it never regained the same level of popularity in the UK, the very fact that it returned at all showed the power of its international fan base. Few sitcoms ever get a second chance after cancellation. For Mind Your Language, overseas audiences kept it alive. The revival proved that what Britain had discarded, the rest of the world still cherished. 8. Zara Nutley's Mrs. Courtney almost written out. While most of the comedy in Mind Your Language came from the classroom, the school's stern principal, Miss Courtney, was an unforgettable presence. Played by Zara Nutley, she was the no-nonsense headmistress who constantly scolded Mr. Brown and demanded order. Her sharp tongue and icy glares became a running joke in almost every episode. Yet behind the scenes, there were doubts about her character. Some ITV executives worried that Miss Courtney was too harsh and might overshadow the classroom humor. There were even discussions about softening her role or possibly writing her out entirely in later series. Fortunately, producers recognized that she balanced the chaos of the students and Mr. Brown perfectly. Her deadpan delivery and constant exasperation gave the show much of its rhythm. Without her, the classroom would have spiraled into pure slapstick. Nutley herself embraced the role, becoming fondly remembered as the dragon of the school. Though she never became a household name outside the series, her contribution was essential. Miss Courtney's stern presence reminded audiences that beneath all the chaos, this was still supposed to be a place of learning, at least in theory. 9. The theme tune's strange history. Every sitcom has its signature, and for Mind Your Language, it was its jaunty, upbeat theme tune. The light-hearted melody set the tone for the chaos that followed, with a breezy rhythm that immediately told viewers they were in for a half hour of fun. But what many don't know is that the music wasn't written specifically for the series. The show's theme was actually a piece of stock music, originally composed for use in ITV productions years earlier. Rather than commissioning a brand new song, producers pulled it from the company's existing music library. It had been used in other contexts before, but Mind Your Language gave it a permanent home. This unusual choice ended up working perfectly. The cheerful music contrasted with the cultural misunderstandings and classroom disasters, making the humor even more exaggerated. Over time, the tune became inseparable from the show itself. Today, the opening bars instantly transport fans back to the late 70s. What began as recycled stock music turned into one of the most recognizable sitcom themes of the era, proof that sometimes television history is made by accident. 10. Cult status today. Nearly 50 years after it first aired, Mind Your Language remains one of the most unusual success stories in British television. In the UK, it is rarely repeated, often remembered more for its controversy than its comedy. Critics continue to debate whether it should be seen as lighthearted fun or an outdated relic. But elsewhere in the world, the series has never lost its charm. In India, Pakistan, Nigeria, and Malaysia, it still attracts huge audiences online. Full episodes on streaming platforms and YouTube have been watched millions of times, proving its appeal has endured across generations. Fans who grew up with the series often introduce it to their children, keeping its memory alive decades later. Merchandise, DVD releases, and constant discussions on fan forums show that Mind Your Language hasn't been forgotten. While modern television would never attempt a show like it today, its blend of classroom chaos, cultural mix-ups, and Barry Evans's gentle humor continue to strike a nostalgic chord. A sitcom that divided Britain but united international audiences, Mind Your Language has become a true cult classic. Its place in television history is as complicated and as entertaining as the lessons taught in Mr. Brown's classroom. Mind Your Language was never just a sitcom about a classroom. It was a reflection of Britain in the late 1970s, a country wrestling with new cultures, new voices, and the humor that came from misunderstanding. For some, it was lighthearted fun. For others, it was a step too far. What's clear is that the show refused to be forgotten. Nearly 5 decades later, it still sparks debate, laughter, and nostalgia. Its international cast, its controversial storylines, and the tragic fate of its star Barry Evans all added to a legacy that is as complex as the show itself. From the threat of early cancellation to its unlikely revival, from banned episodes to cult status. Around the globe, Mind Your Language remains one of television's strangest success stories. A sitcom mocked at home but loved abroad, laughed at yet still remembered.